Eric Holder, you remember, served as President Barack Obama's first attorney general. And this is now his kind of life's work. He now chairs the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, which spends all its time working to end gerrymandering, stop voter suppression heading into the next election. And he joins me now. It's great to have you on the program. Maybe let's start with the census numbers, which came out today. There was a lot of speculation about which states would gain and which states would lose. I think there was worry that New York might lose as much as 2. And so in that way, it sort of dodged a bullet, although 89 more people, it wouldn't have lost any. What is your takeaway from the census announcement, and how much does the adding and subtracting matter in the redistricting project we're about to see undertaken?
Yeah, I think it does. What's going to happen in the state legislatures and what the House of Representatives is going to look like, I think we're going to have probably some pretty close margins there. And so the movement of one seat to one state and taking it away from another one, I think can have an impact. I'm especially concerned if you look at Texas, it's going to get additional seats. It's largely because of an increase in the Hispanic population, the African-American population, the suburban population, young people. And yet, I suspect they're going to try to draw the lines there in such a way as to not give full throat to the people who should have increased political power there. They'll draw them in such a way to minimize the acquisition of power by those groups. And so, those additional seats that Texas is going to get, I suspect will be, they'll attempt to gerrymander them, which means we're probably going to end up in court.
This is such a great point because it connects directly to exactly what I was just discussing, right? The population growth in Texas is being driven around these large metro areas that are growing very rapidly in Harris County, around Dallas-Fort Worth, around Austin, Texas, particularly as well. And that's the sort of population driver in that state. But of course, what the Texas Republicans are going to do is they're going to say, okay, great, thanks, Census. We got 2 more members of Congress, but we're going to try to take those and draw districts so like we can net 2 more Republican seats.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what they did in 2011. If you remember what Tom DeLay was doing, I think they got 2 or 3 additional seats in 2011, again, largely because of the increase in the Hispanic population. The lines that they drew did not reflect in any way an increase in power to Hispanics in the state of Texas. I sued when I was the attorney general to try to reverse that. We then had the disastrous Shelby County decision. We had the change in who became attorney general. We sued in the Obama administration. When Jeff Sessions became the attorney general, he put the Justice Department on the side of defending the state as opposed to suing it. So this is all about the Republican acquisition and retention of illegitimate power. That's what this thing is all about. I mean, if you look at the first congressional elections after the 2011 gerrymanders, Democrats won about 1.2, 1.3 million more votes nationwide for the House of Representatives, and yet had a 33-seat minority. They were in the minority by 33 seats. And that was strictly related to the lines that were drawn in 2011. Now, we are trying to make sure that in 2021, we don't have that same kind of disparate impact.
Well, one of the issues here, of course, is that the Supreme Court has said that partisan gerrymandering is okay. It's not something the court is going to stop. And so, if you have a state legislature and different states have different ways of doing it. Sometimes it's the legislature and the governor. Sometimes it's independent commission. I think Iowa does the independent commission route, if I recall correctly. But basically, the court has said, look, if you've got a Republican supermajorities and a Republican governor in, say, Texas, and they want to try to come up with a 9-3 or 15-5, sure. They can do it. And that's basically the way the Supreme Court jurisprudence works now.
Yeah, the Supreme Court in the disastrous, Rucho case said that you can't bring partisan gerrymandering cases in federal court. We can still bring them in the state courts using the state constitutions, which is what we did in North Carolina and successfully brought a case there. We did so in Pennsylvania as well. The Supreme Court has made it unnecessarily difficult. Now, we can still bring racial gerrymandering cases in federal court, and there is a congruence between what they try to do on a partisan basis and how they use race in order to gain these advantages. And so we will have avenues open to us in terms of litigation.
I want to ask you, since I have you and I don't get a chance to talk to you that often, you were former attorney general, of course, under Barack Obama. Your Department of Justice was quite energetic in pursuing patterns and practice investigations of police departments that were suspected of having a pattern or practice of violating people's constitutional rights. Today, Merrick Garland, who of course is now the Attorney General, announced that there would be such an investigation opened into Louisville. That comes just a week after announcing such an investigation into Minneapolis. These have basically gone all but dormant under Donald Trump. Are you encouraged by the revival of this tool?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, it matches the moment where this nation is. The George Floyd murder awakened the country to the reality of how people of color too often are treated by members of law enforcement. We brought a record number of pattern of practice cases while I was Attorney General. The Trump administration decided not to bring, I think, any cases during the 4 years that they were there. There is a crying need for reform in this nation with regard to how people in law enforcement interact with the people they're supposed to serve in communities of color. Pattern of practice cases are essential tools in bringing that reform about. I'm heartened to see that what Merrick Garland did today. I'm heartened to see who was flanking him when he made that announcement. Vanita Gupta and Lisa Monaco. Vanita Gupta had an unfair journey through her Senate confirmation process. She's a person who's steeped in these issues, who is a civil rights attorney, and I think the team that you saw up there today will bring pattern of practice investigations and make criminal justice reform a priority again for the United States Department of Justice.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.